Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. In the silent corridors of Brookfield University, sunlight streamed through the large windows, illuminating the blackboards still marked with white chalk. Professor Harrison, renowned for his arrogance and mathematical genius, advanced with a condescending smile, ready to demonstrate his superiority once again to his students. At the far end of the hall, the university janitor, Mr. James Carter, was calmly sweeping the floor. His quiet demeanor and simple uniform gave no hint of the brilliant mind he possessed. Some students barely glanced at him, accustomed to seeing him disappear into the shadows of the corridors. That morning, an unexpected challenge was about to shatter everyone's certainties. Professor Harrison, encountering Mr. Carter near the amphitheater, uttered, half mockingly, half provocatively, "Mr. Carter, I doubt you can solve this equation. It's a real puzzle for my students." The concierge looked up, a faint, mysterious smile playing on his lips. He had never sought to flaunt his genius, preferring a simple and discreet life. Yet, seeing the numbers traced on the board, his fingers almost trembled with excitement. Each symbol and each variable awakened in him an innate intuition that neither his work nor his social standing had ever revealed. The students, fascinated, moved closer. The professor, confident in his abilities, expected a humiliating failure. But Mr. Carter, silently, began to write on the board with disconcerting ease. His calculations were quick, precise, and of an elegance that even Harrison would have found hard to match. When he finally put down his chalk, the hall was plunged into total silence. On the board, the solution appeared perfectly resolved, each step logical and irrefutable. Professor Harrison, stunned, could not hide his disbelief. The legend of the unassuming caretaker had just been shattered before his very eyes. And in that simple gesture, a long-kept secret was revealed. Beneath Mr. Carter's modest uniform hid a genius that no one had ever suspected. The next morning, the university seemed more alive than usual. Students whispered in the corridors, still amazed by what they had seen the day before. "Did you see the janitor solve Harrison's equation?" one asked another. The rumor grew in every corridor, every classroom. Mr. James Carter, true to his routine, swept the floors as if nothing were amiss. But inside, his mind was racing. He knew that what he had shown yesterday was only a glimpse of his true potential. He preferred to remain discreet, for the academic world, with its hasty judgments and prejudices, was not ready to accept that a janitor could surpass a renowned professor. In the staff room, Professor Harrison was red with anger and humiliation. His ego had taken a serious hit. He couldn't bear the thought that a janitor, whom he had always ignored, could outshine him. He turned over and over in his mind every possible way to regain his reputation. "I have to show everyone that it was a stroke of luck," he murmured, clenching his fists. "No one must believe that a janitor could solve my equations." But Harrison didn't realize how much interest he had just aroused at the university. The students, fascinated by the mystery surrounding Mr. Carter, began to follow him discreetly, hoping to catch a glimpse of another feat. Some even asked him math questions, which he always answered calmly and precisely, letting slip a small, enigmatic smile. That day, a visiting professor, specializing in cryptography, made the innocent remark, "It seems our dear concierge has an extraordinary mind." Mr. Carter simply nodded, but his eyes shone with a gleam that said, "I can go much further than you imagine." The chapter ends on a cliffhanger. Harrison, humiliated and determined, decides to prepare a real mathematical challenge, a problem he is certain no one will be able to solve, but Mr. Carter, without anyone knowing it yet, is already preparing to take on this new challenge with the same impressive mastery as the day before. The following day, the main lecture hall was packed. The students murmured excitedly, something unusual was about to happen. Professor Harrison, dressed in his impeccable suit and with a face etched with wounded pride, stepped forward to the center. His gaze searched for Mr. Carter in the crowd, like a predator spotting its prey. "Today," he declared in a loud and authoritative voice, "I propose a challenge to anyone who dares to measure themselves against me. An equation that few can solve, a puzzle that will test your logic, your perseverance, and your intelligence. The students exchanged astonished glances. Many thought Harrison simply wanted to humiliate someone again, but no one yet knew who would dare to take up the challenge. Mr. Carter, who was passing by with his cleaning cart, stopped and looked up at the painting. The professor, noticing this, gave a wry smile. "Ah, you over there, perhaps you'd like to give it a try?" he said, his voice full of condescension. "But don't get your hopes up. Even my best students have failed." A silence fell. Everyone was waiting for the concierge's reply. With disconcerting calm, Mr. Carter put down his broom, stepped forward to the painting, and replied. "Show me the equation, Professor." Harrison, confident in his abilities, wrote out a complex series of variables, functions, and constants. Even the brightest students frowned, trying to keep up. The atmosphere was electric, the tension between arrogance and mystery filled every corner of the room. Mr. Carter carefully observed each symbol, analyzing each step in his mind like a game of chess. Slowly, he began to write his calculations on the board. His hand was steady, his movements precise. Each gesture revealed a methodical and brilliant mind, capable of seeing solutions invisible to everyone else. A few minutes later, he put down his chalk. Silence fell instantly. On the blackboard, the equation was solved, with an elegance and clarity that left everyone speechless. Even Harrison, red with anger and disbelief, couldn't dispute the result. "Impossible," he murmured through gritted teeth. "No one could." But Mr. Carter, with a simple smile, replied. "There is always a solution if you know how to look beyond appearances." The students erupted in enthusiastic murmurs and quiet applause. For the first time, the silent, unassuming figure of the janitor eclipsed that of the proud professor. Harrison, humiliated before everyone, knew then that this intellectual duel had only just begun. After the public humiliation, Professor Harrison spent the night brooding. His pride wouldn't allow him to let a mere janitor surpass him again. He knew Mr. Carter hadn't revealed anything of his true intellectual power, but he had to find a way to trap him and discredit him in front of the entire university. The next morning, Harrison entered the lecture hall with a defiant air. This time, he had prepared an even more complex math problem, mixing differential calculus, number theory, and abstract logic. His goal was not just to test Mr. Carter, but to create an impossible situation, designed to ridicule him. The curious students were already crowding the rows. Many were whispering, anticipating another intellectual duel. Professor Harrison, confident in his plan, launched into his speech. "Today, I'm going to present the most difficult equation ever given at this university. Whoever solves it, well, they'll never exist." The janitor, who was passing by with his cleaning cart, heard these words but showed no sign of nervousness. He stopped, put down the broom, and walked calmly forward. His gaze met Harrison's, who tried to hide his concern behind a forced smile. "Show it to me, Professor." "I'll try," replied Mr. Carter in a calm but confident voice. Harrison wrote the problem on the board, a veritable labyrinth of symbols and formulas. Even the best students frowned, some murmuring that it was impossible to solve this equation in less than an hour. Yet, Mr. Carter began to write, his mind bubbling behind calm eyes. Each step he traced showed not only his mastery of calculations, but also exceptional creativity. He rearranged formulas, saw invisible patterns, and applied methods that even Harrison had never taught. The minutes ticked by. The students' murmurs turned into admiring whispers. Harrison, increasingly red with anger and disbelief, watched his plan fail before his eyes. Finally, Mr. Carter put down his chalk and took a step back. The board displayed a complete, precise, and perfectly justified solution. The silence was deafening, each student staring at the board, impressed. Harrison, defeated and furious, could only murmur. Comment. Mr. Carter, without arrogance, simply replied. "What seems impossible exists only in your mind, Professor." At that moment, Harrison understood something terrifying. This was not just a janitor capable of solving complex equations. He was facing a genius who had long chosen the shadows, but who had just emerged, implacable and discreet. The chapter ends with Harrison, frustrated and obsessed with this mystery, silently vowing to find a way to test Mr. Carter's limits even further. After 2 consecutive humiliations, Professor Harrison was consumed by obsession. He knew Mr. Carter possessed a rare genius, but he refused to admit it publicly. To discredit him once and for all, Harrison devised a challenge he thought impossible, a puzzle combining advanced mathematics, pure logic, and cryptographic theory. The next day, he summoned Mr. Carter and the students to the large lecture hall. Rumors were already circulating, everyone wanted to witness the upcoming intellectual duel. The hall was packed with curious students, some taking notes, others whispering theories about what would happen. "Today," Harrison declared, his tone firm and condescending, "I present you with the most complex puzzle this university has ever seen. Even the best mathematicians would fail." He slowly turned his gaze toward Mr. Carter, searching for the slightest sign of doubt. Mr. Carter, unperturbed, replied, "Show it to me, Professor. I'll see what I can do." Harrison wrote the puzzle on the board. It was a mixture of complex calculations and codes to decipher, so difficult that even the brightest students remained silent, stunned. Many murmured, "It's impossible." Mr. Carter approached, studied each line, each symbol, and began to write. His concentration was total, almost palpable. His fingers traced equations and deductions with natural fluidity, as if his mind instantly saw the solution that everyone else considered unattainable. The minutes ticked by, and Harrison watched, speechless, as his plan failed once again. The students held their breath, fascinated. Some were beginning to realize that this janitor wasn't just brilliant, but perhaps one of the most gifted minds they had ever seen. Finally, Mr. Carter laid down his chalk. The puzzle was solved, each step perfectly justified, each code deciphered with logic and creativity. The amphitheater erupted in murmurs of admiration and muffled applause. Harrison, humiliated, felt his pride waver dangerously. For the first time, he understood that he could never underestimate this man. He also realized that Mr. Carter had never sought recognition, he had always worked behind the scenes, but his talents surpassed anything Harrison had imagined. This chapter ends with Harrison, obsessed and determined. He vows to create one last, even more personal challenge that will reveal not only Mr. Carter's genius, but also his own ability to compete, or to be completely outclassed. Harrison could no longer be satisfied with public mathematical challenges. The humiliation of the past few days had driven him to devise a more personal plan. He wanted to test not only Mr. Carter's intelligence, but also his patience and ethics. The professor invited Mr. Carter to his office under the pretext of discussing a special academic project. The janitor entered, polite as ever, showing no sign of concern. The atmosphere was tense, thick with anticipation. Harrison, behind his desk, placed a box in front of him. "Inside," he said in a tone that mixed defiance and provocation, "is a series of riddles and problems that I have designed especially for you. I doubt you will be able to solve them all." Mr. Carter calmly examined the box. His eyes shone with quiet curiosity. "Very well, Professor. I will try." Harrison knew he couldn't compete with Mr. Carter's genius in a public duel, so he decided to test something more subtle, cunning and moral logic. Each puzzle contained not only complex calculations but also ethical dilemmas, choices where the perfect mathematical solution might conflict with justice or honor. Mr. Carter, seated, opened the box and examined the first problems. His speed and elegance in calculations were still there, but this time, he also had to consider the implications of each solution. The minutes turned into hours. Harrison, tense, followed his every move, looking for the slightest sign of weakness or error. But Mr. Carter, with his legendary calm, solved every problem brilliantly, always choosing solutions that respected ethics and logic, demonstrating not only his genius, but also his wisdom. Harrison, both furious and fascinated, realized a truth he had previously refused to acknowledge: it was no longer simply a matter of raw intelligence. Mr. Carter possessed a rare balance of reasoning, creativity, and morality. No challenge, however complex, seemed capable of stopping him. The chapter ends with Harrison trembling inwardly, unable to hide his fascination. For the first time, he wondered if he could truly surpass this man, or if he should accept that he had finally found someone whose genius knew no bounds. The following morning, the entire university seemed to be buzzing with excitement. Whispers about Mr. Carter's exploits had already spread through the corridors to every classroom. The students, fascinated, spoke of him as a hidden prodigy, impossible to ignore. Some even wondered why a genius of his caliber was working as a janitor. Meanwhile, Harrison wandered the corridors, tormented. Every admiring smile, every intrigued glance directed at Mr. Carter was like a needle piercing his pride. He knew he had to act, but he was beginning to realize that the janitor wasn't just intelligent, he was unwavering, methodical, and above all, unpredictable. That day, an exceptional meeting was held in the main hall. The curious students took their seats on the bleachers while Harrison spoke. Today, I will finally show the limit of Mr. Carter's genius. One last test, he announced, his tone stern but betraying his anxiety. Mr. Carter, calm and unperturbed, stood up and approached. He knew the professor had planned something particularly difficult. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. What will he come up with this time? Harrison unveiled a new challenge, a combination of advanced mathematical problems, logic puzzles, and codes to decipher, this time presented on a large interactive screen. The stakes were higher. The solution required not only superior intelligence, but also strategic creativity and speed of execution. Mr. Carter sat down in front of the board, observing every detail with concentration. He began to write, his mind navigating between complex calculations and innovative problem-solving strategies. The students held their breath, fascinated by the speed and precision of his movements. Harrison, growing increasingly tense, watched his plan fail once again. The crowd around them was captivated. For the first time, the janitor was no longer invisible. His genius completely eclipsed the professor's academic stature, and this was beginning to become public knowledge. At the end of the test, Mr. Carter put down his chalk and stepped back. The board displayed a complete, elegant, and perfect solution. The lecture hall erupted in applause and exclamations of admiration. The students finally realized that the mysterious janitor was not just a brilliant man, but a genius capable of surpassing even the greatest professors. Harrison, humiliated but fascinated, understood that the intellectual battle had just crossed a new threshold. He was no longer facing a simple employee, but a superior mind whose discretion had never diminished his power. The chapter ends with Harrison's determination. He vows inwardly to create one last challenge, a test that will test Mr. Carter not only intellectually, but also emotionally, in order to finally understand the man behind the genius. Harrison knew that after several public humiliations, he had to change his strategy. Simple mathematical puzzles would no longer suffice to test Mr. Carter. He wanted to devise an ultimate challenge, combining logic, creativity, and, above all, emotional intelligence. Harrison hoped that this time, he could strike a nerve, a dilemma that the janitor's genius couldn't resolve through calculations alone. For several days, Harrison worked in secret. He created a complex scenario, a simulation that combined problem-solving, decision-making under pressure, and managing a delicate ethical situation. He knew that Mr. Carter had a strong sense of morality, and that was precisely what he intended to exploit. When the day arrived, the amphitheater was packed. The students, intrigued, had gathered to watch what promised to be the most fascinating duel in the university's recent history. Harrison spoke. Today, you will be faced with a unique situation, Mr. Carter. It's not just about solving equations. It will require judgment, discernment, and wisdom. Mr. Carter, calm as always, nodded. Very well, Professor. I am ready to take on the challenge. Harrison activated the simulation. On the screen, a complex scenario unfolded, a logistical problem where quick decisions affected several virtual characters, each facing difficult moral situations. Mr. Carter's choices would have immediate consequences on the course of the story. As he worked, the students began to see another side of Mr. Carter, his calmness, his empathy, and his ability to anticipate the consequences of his decisions. Every choice he made demonstrated not only intellectual genius, but also a caring and fair heart. Harrison watched, speechless. What he had anticipated as a trap seemed to be turning into yet another demonstration of Mr. Carter's quiet superiority. Even when faced with impossible dilemmas, the janitor found balanced solutions, combining logic and humanity. At the end of the test, the screen displayed the result. Mr. Carter had successfully solved all the problems, maintaining fairness and justice in every decision. The lecture hall erupted in spontaneous applause, and many students rose to their feet to applaud what they now considered an extraordinary genius. Harrison, sitting behind his desk, felt a strange combination of frustration and admiration. For the first time, he understood that Mr. Carter was not just an intellectual genius, he was a complete man, capable of thinking with his heart as much as with his mind. The chapter ends with Harrison, inwardly distraught but intrigued, aware that the next move could well change their relationship forever and reveal even more about the mysterious concierge. After the final test, something had changed. Harrison no longer saw Mr. Carter solely as an adversary, but as a rare and admirable mind. In the university corridors, students still whispered about the janitor's genius, but now Harrison asked himself a new question: what if he could learn from him instead of trying to trap him? The professor invited Mr. Carter to his office for a private discussion. The tension was still there, but different this time, no longer aggressive challenge, but a mixture of respect and curiosity. Harrison began to speak, hesitant, aware of the impact of his words. "Mr. Carter, I must admit something. I underestimated you. Your abilities far exceed anything I could have imagined." The concierge smiled modestly. "I've never sought admiration, Professor. I enjoy solving problems, and helping those in need." Harrison took a deep breath. "I want to propose something. Rather than continuing this rivalry, I'd like us to work together on a special project. Your skills and creativity combined with my knowledge could accomplish extraordinary things." Mr. Carter remained silent for a moment, observing the man who had been his greatest rival. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Very well. But on one condition: we remain honest in our methods and intentions. I refuse any moral compromise." Harrison agreed, acknowledging that Mr. Carter's genius also came with an ethic he himself could not ignore. The two men then began exchanging ideas, methods, and theories. The entire university began to notice the change. Harrison was no longer just an arrogant professor, and Mr. Carter was no longer just a discreet janitor. Together, they formed a formidable duo, capable of solving problems no one else dared even consider. The students, fascinated, observed this new dynamic. Some wondered how the professor and the janitor had gone from bitter adversaries to such complementary collaborators. But what was clear was that the university had seen nothing yet. The combination of their genius and determination would lead to spectacular discoveries and solutions. The chapter ends on a note of anticipation. A new era is beginning for the university, marked by an unexpected partnership, an alliance that would surprise everyone and redefine what it truly means to be a genius. A few weeks after their alliance, the university was in a state of excitement. Students and faculty had learned that Professor Harrison and the janitor Mr. Carter were working together on a unique project, solving a complex problem combining applied mathematics, cryptography, and logistic optimization. In a secret room, reserved for advanced research, the two men had settled in, surrounded by whiteboards, computers, and stacks of documents. The atmosphere was electric, not of competition this time, but of intense concentration and intellectual excitement. Harrison, aware of his limitations, allowed Mr. Carter to guide certain stages of the research. The janitor, with his quiet and precise method, proposed solutions that the professor would never have considered. Each idea was tested, calculated, and analyzed in an impressive intellectual ballet. "Look at this variable here," Mr. Carter said, pointing to a series of numbers. "If we incorporate it into this equation, we can cut the calculation time in half, while maintaining accuracy." Harrison, astonished, took notes and replied, "That's brilliant. I would never have thought of that. Your intuition is incredible." As the days went by, the project took shape. The two men combined not only their genius, but also their complementary perspectives. Harrison brought his deep knowledge of complex theories and academic methods, while Mr. Carter found creative and unexpected solutions, often outside the box. The students, who had been invited to observe certain aspects of the project, were fascinated. For them, the concierge was no longer simply a discreet employee, he was a mentor, a model of perseverance and creativity. Harrison, for his part, had changed. Arrogance had given way to genuine respect and admiration for the man he had once underestimated. The chapter ends on a scene of anticipation. As the first phase of the project drew to a close, an unexpected obstacle arose, threatening to slow their progress. But Mr. Carter, with his legendary composure, offered a slight smile. He knew that this additional challenge would further reveal their combined potential, and pave the way for spectacular success. The project on which Harrison and Mr. Carter had worked tirelessly was finally reaching its final stage. The entire university had been kept informed of the spectacular progress, and curiosity was at its peak. It was no longer just an intellectual challenge, it was a demonstration of exceptional collaboration between two brilliant minds. The big day arrived. In the main lecture hall, professors, students, and special guests were gathered for the final presentation. The giant screen displayed complex data, simulations, and advanced mathematical models. Everything seemed technical, but the result went beyond the numbers, an innovative, efficient, and elegant solution to a problem the university had considered unsolvable for years. Mr. Carter and Harrison stood side by side. Harrison, now humble and full of admiration, outlined the plan, while Mr. Carter explained the innovative solutions he had proposed. Each step demonstrated not only their combined genius, but also their complementarity. One brought academic rigor, the other intuition and creativity. When the presentation ended, the lecture hall erupted in applause. The students rose to their feet, some cheering them as heroes. The professors, including those who had once doubted Mr. Carter, rose to commend his outstanding work. The janitor, humble but proud, smiled, pleased that his secret was finally out in the open. Harrison turned to him and said in a low voice, "I never thought I could learn so much from someone I underestimated." "Thank you, James." Mr. Carter simply replied, "We worked together, Professor. This is the best possible result." This success marked not only the culmination of a project, but also a profound transformation. The university had discovered that genius could be found where it was least expected, and that intelligence and wisdom were not reserved for those who wore academic titles or robes. The chapter, and the story, ends with a clear message: sometimes, true genius is revealed in the shadows, and collaboration, respect, and humility can accomplish what competition alone could never achieve. Harrison and Mr. Carter, now partners and friends, continued to inspire those who believed that every person, regardless of their role or status, could change the world.